Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are at the start of our care programme, and we've got episode 1 with a very special person and also a very special airline. And the airline we're talking about is Etihad, and the person is no other than Martin Drew, Senior Vice President, Sales and Cargo. So Martin, thank you so much for joining us. And I know how much care means to you, both on a professional and personal note. So it's really nice to have you on board.
Good to be here, Chris. I know we've talked about doing this for a long time, haven't we? So
we have indeed, yeah.
It's good to finally have had a chance to get together.
We've talked about it so long, I've had to change one of the records there about how long you've been at Etihad.
Indeed. Yeah. But no, really good to be finally getting an opportunity to talk to you about this.
Yeah, brilliant.
And everything that we're doing at Etihad, and exactly what care means to us as well.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And also how it links in with your new 9 priorities.
The 9 priorities, yeah, most definitely.
And it's cracking, because when we seen those, we were very pleased because it aligns perfectly. So it's a nice little mix. Martin, first question to get us off and rolling. So what a few years, especially the challenges that the industry has had, but for yourself, coming in and out of different parts of Etihad, it must have been one of the most challenging but rewarding periods of your career, of your almost 18 years now. So do you want to just give us a little bit of background of what's happened over the last few years for you personally as well?
I mean, look, managing the business through COVID has been, it was incredibly challenging, incredibly rewarding as well in terms of what we achieved. And having been with the company, it's actually 18 years next week on the 9th of March. So I've been with the company a long time. I'm old school in Etihad terms. You think the airline just turns 20 in November this year. And having been fortunate enough to have various roles, lived in various places around the world with Etihad. Starting my career on the cargo side. I'm a cargo person through and through, as you know. Started my career with you at Lufthansa Cargo. But having spent the first 12 years on the cargo side of the business, basically doing sort of everything as relates to cargo sales, sort of operations, an 18-month stint with Jet Airways as well in Mumbai, which was heading up their cargo division, which was fascinating. And then moving across to the passenger side in 2015, and then coming back to cargo in November 20, and as well then also taking on responsibility for all the global sales on the passenger side as well. But then to manage the business through both passenger and cargo through that COVID era was, it was an incredible period. As we know, from a passenger perspective, there was very limited activity. Yeah. But it was cargo that was, it became an absolute lifeline for the airline. And some of the things we did, I just didn't think in my wildest dreams we would ever do. Operating passenger aircraft purely for cargo purposes, repurposing 5 777-300ERs, removing the seats, loading cargo in cabin, really developing, and we did it within sort of, so the 24th of March 2020 is a date that is ingrained in everybody's mind in Etihad. That was the day that the UAE shut down their airspace. So all our entire fleet was grounded. But within 72 hours after that, we then developed a cargo network using our freighter fleet, of course, as well as the passenger fleet, wide-body passenger fleet. And what we then did over in the coming months in terms of movement of PPE, the whole food security program for the UAE, was just incredible. And as I said, I hate to think what position the airline would have found itself in without cargo. To be able to lead the cargo division during such a period was a real honour. And I look back at it now, with great pride in terms of what we achieved. When you then, we then get into the period where you're talking, the distribution of the vaccine, the development of the Hope Consortium. So we did some incredibly rewarding sort of things.
That Hope Consortium, I remember getting in touch with you about that, because that's another word that just resonates with everybody, especially going through periods of challenge. Can you just explain a little bit more about how that came about and what it actually is?
So it was. So we were a founding sort of member of the Hope Consortium. It was an initiative led by the Abu Dhabi Department of Health, and basically bringing together various Abu Dhabi stakeholders, and of course including Etihad, to really develop Abu Dhabi as a sort of global distribution hub for the COVID-19 vaccine. So what the consortium did is that it was involved in the procurement of the vaccines, bringing them into Abu Dhabi and then distributing them from Abu Dhabi. And it was, we moved hundreds of millions of doses. And, you know Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi government, in terms of just what they do from a charitable perspective, in terms of the humanitarian aid they provide to, around the world. So many of these vaccines were donated by the Abu Dhabi government to various sort of developing nations. And of course, we were the airline that sort of the carrier that distributed and carried those vaccines. We operated into places we've never been to before, and it was, as I said, we carried hundreds of millions of doses of the vaccine, and it was all part of a bigger play as well, a more long-term vision to create Abu Dhabi as this sort of life science and pharma hub as well. So we really sort of fast-tracked a lot of the development of the infrastructure to support this. It was an incredible initiative to be part of.
It goes to show, though, doesn't it? I mean, the industry in itself is very resilient, and it's proven how agile it is, and it's also now shown how collaborative the authorities, stakeholders, everybody can be. Yeah. So there's no reason why that pace of progression and development can't maintain itself. Yeah. But in some cases, like your own, I mean, it just boosted everything that you were doing.
It did. I mean, it was just. We were working with, other stakeholders in Abu Dhabi that we'd done bits and pieces with in the past, but the way that everybody came together and the speed that we were able to sort of to move, it was incredibly impressive. And as a result of that, now we're building on that and doing many other things as well. So I think that you're right. I mean, that agility, that view on we need to work together. Yeah. To bring this all together to sort of be able to achieve the objective here was all stakeholders, customs, police, the security. It was everything. Everybody came together, and it was. And as I said, we continue to benefit from that. Since the development of the Hope Consortium.
And it must be a good boost to everybody locally as well. So even the individual entities. Yeah. Once they can see that there's no pushback, there's no stresses and pressures. They're more comfortable to do things more.
They are, and you're right. As a result of doing this, it's led to many other sort of business streams as well. Yeah. That we're now, with people that we used to partner in the past, but there was maybe fairly limited what we did. And now it's those partnerships have led to many other sort of business streams that we now do. So it was So I mean, look, to manage through COVID was obviously it was trying times, incredibly difficult. You think of what the world went through during that period. But from managing Etihad Cargo specifically through that was incredibly rewarding. And it's what it did, I think, for our industry as well was, I think there was this real, all of a sudden people understood what the global supply chain was. People really understood the value of air cargo, of logistics. And I think what it also, what it did is, within a predominantly passenger airline, as you know, the cargo division has always been sort of
poor relation.
Looked down on a bit. Now it's sort of, and still, and it's my responsibility, it's our responsibility to ensure that recognition never leaves. And the cargo division, within Etihad, cargo's always been highly valued within it, as you know only too well, with your years with Etihad and the amount of investment we've made into cargo, invested in freighters, sort of the infrastructure and everything else. But it's what we did during COVID really, really elevated even more the perception of cargo. And to the point where, where I manage both sides of the business, sort of passenger and passenger sales and cargo. And I've had a number of people from the passenger side now that have moved across to cargo. That was pretty much that was unheard of in the past. I remember when I made the transition from cargo to the passenger side. And the guys on the passenger side said, "Oh, how can you work in cargo? It's pretty boring, and it's all about boxes and everything." Well, remember those boxes have customers attached to them. Yeah. When things go wrong, maybe it takes a little while longer to hear from the customer than it does for us as a passenger. But it's it's an incredible industry.
It is, and I think that recognition you're talking about, and everybody's awareness, the way to sort of make sure that that's kept is by continuing the speed and the changes that are necessary. Because obviously we know there are still changes that have to be brought in. So digitisation and various other innovations that are necessary. So that's the way to maintain.
But again, I think COVID, Chris, and I'm sure you'll agree, in terms of the whole digitalisation piece, I think that we've advanced on the cargo side for tremendously as a result of that, because we had to. There's still a long way to go. When you draw those comparisons, sort of cargo versus passenger. But I remember sort of before previously. Before going across to the passenger side, you go to these various cargo conferences and you just hear the same thing over and over again, and there was just no progress and everything else. But it was amazing going away from the cargo business for 5 years and then coming back, the progress that had been made. And then, of course, COVID then hits, and just the further progress that was then came was it's incredibly impressive. As I said, we've still got some way to go, but we've come a long way.
Yeah, it's. I was going to say it's probably not the right word, funny, but it's strange how things that seem to be so disastrous can suddenly, bring momentum, and there's always some good that comes out of bad. So, right, that was obviously one of the biggest challenges in your 18 years. Mm-hmm. And looking back over those 18 years, by the way, you must be one of the last ones. There mustn't be many people above you now on the old.
There's not many. There's a few. There's a few. I've got a guy that heads up the OTA channel for me, so the online travel agency. He's been with the company 19 years. There's a couple of others, but there's not many.
Not many.
Yeah.
Which is great, and
Listen, I'm very, very lucky to have been with such an incredible company for as long as I have, and to for the opportunities it's given me in terms of working on both sides of the business, sort of. Having been lucky enough to spend the vast majority of the time living here in Abu Dhabi, an amazing place, as you know, only too well, amazing place to live. But then also spending 18 months in Mumbai, then 3 years in New York, and then 2 years back in London, and then I returned here sort of 2 years ago. So it's been and just various roles, sort of working on both sides of the business now. As 2 weeks ago, I took on responsibility for marketing, brand and sponsorships as well.
As the fly past has just witnessed, especially for you. Yeah,
that was
well organised.
So I'm very fortunate, and as you know, I mean, what a company, what a brand. We've had our ups and downs, we've had our different phases. Obviously, the incredibly, the unprecedented sort of growth that we saw in the early years, which he was very much part of, taking delivery of 1 to 2 aircraft a month.
Oh, amazing.
It seemed to be, new route after new route being launched. We then went into that period where we, the Etihad Airways partners period where we were investing in other airlines, which didn't work out too well, that strategy, but it was a fascinating period. And then, of course, we go into the COVID era, and now, as a few months ago now, we've had a new CEO join, Antonaldo Neves, that's come in, and of course we now enter this news phase. And as we come out, we're out of the COVID era now. We go back into growth mode, which is really exciting. I think the growth will be maybe a little bit more controlled than it was in the early years, but we're going into an exciting period again.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, not just our industry, but there are so many experts. And if everybody really was an expert, we would have all taken out long-term, low-interest rate mortgages a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how things change. And the experts are not as expert as, they're just the natural forces that keep happening. So the challenges are there. But I've got to say one thing. For a man who spent 18 years and you've done so much, you do look good for 55, Martin.
Thank you
very much. The cream that you're using... Perhaps you should
60,
put that.
So I'll take that 55. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps you should put that on the in-flight giveaways. Now, as far as maintaining the passenger area of responsibility and then coming back to cargo and everything that you've experienced, how good was it when you actually came back to cargo with no, not putting any pressure on you to say that it was better or not, but what was it like coming back into cargo?
It was great. I mean, also as well, remember when I came back, so I spent almost 6 years on the passenger side. Sort of had some cargo responsibility for the regions I was responsible, but 90% of my time was focused on passenger sales and everything sort of related to that. And the great thing about coming to, but also as well, I remember sort of being asked sort of, so this was in what sort of started the conversation probably in August 20. And so we're in the midst of COVID. Sort of the passenger business, it was just so bleak. There was very little happening. When I was then asked, would you consider coming back to cargo, come back to head office, head to cargo division, I was thinking, you know what, that's not a bad thing, because cargo could, that's where it was all happening. Cargo could do no wrong. So it was an exciting proposition just to come back to the industry that I love.
Yeah.
When I draw comparisons to the two, and I'm often asked that, as you know, the cargo industry is so close-knit. Your client base is so small in comparison to the passenger side of the business.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's just, everybody knows everybody, and it's a really nice industry. It means that, relationships are even more important on the cargo side, because you've got, the big forwarders now, and obviously with all the consolidation that's happened over the years, they've got bigger and bigger. It's so important that you have the right type of relationships with those accounts. Yeah. Because if you don't, then they control so much of the market. You can be in trouble. So it's and it's a really dynamic industry as well. I mean, it's on the passenger side, especially on the corporate sales side. So it's a slow burn. You're plugging away. I mean, you're waiting for be it a Barclays, a Deloitte or whoever trying to win their business. They have an RFP that will come out every 2 years. So it's about chipping away during that period to make sure that you're really considered when the RFP comes out. On the cargo side, you're going to see a DGF, a Kuna or whatever. When you walk out of that meeting, you've won business and it starts immediately. Yeah. So it's so much more instant. And as you know, and also as well on the cargo side, your booking window is, on average, it's 3 days out. Whereas on the passenger side, that booking window is much, much further out. Yeah. So I think the cargo industry, it's as I said, it's incredibly close knit, very dynamic, and it's I just think a great industry. So when I had the opportunity to come back, I was very excited about it.
I can imagine. Talking about the market and the changes, what's your slant on the way the top forwarders now are taking responsibility in charge of their own capacity?
Yeah.
And some of that came from frustrations previously as to how their business was being managed.
Yeah.
And also now, more disruptors coming in and also looking at it like Maersk and people like that. How do you feel that's going to pan out now? Obviously, it was great when the demand was so high, but now with rates falling, that's going to put some challenges on that sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the forwarders, sort of, any more sort of controlled lift, as it's termed. Look, you can understand, because I mean we went into that period where demand massively outweighed supply from a capacity standpoint, and obviously that was a byproduct of most of the world's passenger aircraft being grounded. Huge constraints on the ocean side of the business, which just created this sort of perfect storm in terms of for air cargo. So you can understand a lot of forwarders then wanting to take a bit more control of their own destiny. And of course, they then started going out and sort of committing to more capacity themselves, taking aircraft on full time, and then sort of. So it made sense. However, I do, as we've now seen the market start to normalise and normalise at pace. I mean, yields still sit above 2019 levels. In some markets, they're actually pretty much back down to that level again. Yeah. And I do fear for some of these forwarders, but airlines as well, that have committed to capacity and committed to it at a price level which was applicable during COVID. Yeah. And they're now locked in for another 2-3 years or whatever else, and where we're now starting to see rates sort of normalise. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then as relates to, obviously, on the back of the huge profits that were achieved by the large sort of shipping companies, them sort of venturing into the air cargo world, really to have that full control over the supply chain. I mean, again, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because as you know, when you're running a cargo airline, you need to make sure you bring in. It's very different to the shipping side of the business, and you need to make sure you bring in the right expertise. And the model on the shipping side is they very much sort of, a lot of their business is done direct with shippers, as you know, and I think if they, of course they're going to look to try and replicate that on the air cargo side. And as we know, many have tried and failed to do that. There's more and more now where there is sort of, where companies are dealing direct with the actual shipper, but it's more so a tripartite approach.
More transparency.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And But yeah, I do fear for some sort of some of these companies that have committed more, long term for capacity at COVID level pricing, which is not applicable anymore.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Now, the link that we had with this care, because obviously we were sitting back and thinking, now you look at the wonderful things that have happened in the industry that individuals have done, companies have done, and we came up with this care concept, and it was an acronym of the word, consider all responsibilities everywhere, and it was how people should start to collaborate. Now, then we decided we'd like to launch the series with yourselves, but with your 9 priorities. I mean, it's a wonderful thing when you look at some other organisers as well and other industries, the way people are starting to focus now on what people value, not just in working life but in their own life. This care element. So with regard to the 9 priorities, one of the ones that's so important is people.
Yeah.
Now, having known you for an awful long time, so if you're 55, that puts me at about 90.
Yeah.
But having known you for so long, the one thing that's always stood out, Martin, is how much you care about people, and I think that's a wonderful reference to the priorities and the personality and the person that you are. Also in the business, you've got a fantastic reputation. So whoever's doing your PR for your reputation, my God, they're doing a wonderful job. But that people element is so important. But it's also now so evident in the people that we've spoken to here and this family environment in Etihad. Now, do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that? Why that's so important for you? Because obviously it's stable an organisation for 18 years. With your contacts, with your knowledge, with your expertise. I mean, it's an indictment of what Etihad stands for.
Yeah. I mean, it's we talk about the sort of the Etihad family sort of all the time, and that's something that we've all, as senior leaders within the organisation, that's something we're always focused on trying to ensure that we have the right culture within the airline. And of course, over those 18 years, I've seen five CEOs, and of course they bring with them a different approach and develop a different type of culture. But I think with all of them, we've been able to, the culture's always been such where it's been, people have always been really proud to work for the airline. We've always been, and of course with the areas that I've always been, that I've been responsible for, you're responsible for developing the culture within our area, but ultimately it does come down from the very top. And I think, the one thing that we're always, we always want to ensure is that, we are people first. We are sort of, doing everything we can to lead by example, to ensure that we are caring for our people. And, because I think that some of the Gulf airlines maybe get a bit of a bad rap in terms of, we've got over 130 different nationalities working for the airlines. So it's a cultural mixing pot. But that can be challenging in terms of with those different cultures, sort of how you manage that. But I mean, I think something that, and this is why, maybe one of the key reasons I've been with the airline and stuck with the airline for as long as I have, because the culture has always been an enjoyable place to work. And I think, for me, when I look at my own team, what I always try and do is I always try and surround myself with people that I think are better than me, because you're only as good as your team. So whenever I'm recruiting, bringing people, I'm always looking for someone that I think is better than me in terms of what they do. And all about sort of,
and also support them and push them.
Support, of course, and help development. And this is the thing, we're always, any roles that come up, we, always priority is given to promoting from within. Because that sends such a positive message, because people need to think there are opportunities to progress. And and as I said, look, I mean, with 5 different CEOs, it's sort of, different approaches and everything else, but still I think, we've always had a really, really good culture within the airline, and it's always, as I said, and people are all, we do regular, so we do the Etihad organisation health sort of a questionnaire sort of that goes out sort of a couple of times a year, and our EOH scores are always incredibly strong. In terms of those, that pride there is to work for the airline, but also as well with the sort of environment that we've created for people as well.
No, I genuinely, Martin, and it's not just because we're here in Abu Dhabi and interviewing you, but all the ex-Etihad colleagues that I still know, they always have nothing but good to say. Whereas there are some other organisations, and you get people being a little bit bitter or a little bit frustrated. So it goes without saying. But also Abu Dhabi itself is a wonderful place to.
I mean, listen, you've seen how this. Obviously, you were here for a number of years, but just how this place has continued to develop
amazing.
As a destination, as a place to live now. It's incredible, and it's. It's as you know, it's an incredibly safe place to live. It's a great place to bring up a family. You've got the most amazing sort of places here now in terms of Yas Island where we are now. You've got the theme parks, the golf courses. Saadiyat Island, the beach in Saadiyat. It's sort of there's
you could be anywhere in the world.
You could think you're in the Maldives. It's absolutely beautiful. So. As a place to live, as a destination, as a place to develop a logistics hub, it offers so much. It really does.
Yeah, no, 100%. The other thing now as well, which has changed, and I know it's probably a good time to talk about it, the network and the fleet, and obviously the conversions as well. So do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that?
So lots of again with sort of Anton Alder coming in a few months ago, that his priorities are network and fleet. And so from a cargo perspective, we've got the dedicated freighters, the 5777 freighters. Very excitingly, sort of about a month ago now, we firmed up an order for 7 A350 freighters. So I think without doubt, that's going to be a great freighter. I think Airbus now really have a strong offering that's going to compete with the 777. Freighter. We already operate the 350s in passenger form as well, and we've got more to come. So you get that, that economies of scale and everything else. But then, just in general, from a network standpoint, we made some pretty severe cuts during COVID in terms of capacity, in terms of network. We had to, but as I said, we now go back into growth mode, and the network now starts to ramp up again. I mean, we're already back up to 90% of our pre-COVID destinations. But now the focus for this year is about building that depth back into the network, improving connectivity, and then from when we talk about one of the 9 priorities is really developing a long-term plan. So there's a huge amount of work going on at the moment in terms of developing our 2030 vision. So what type of airline do we want to be in 2030, and what's the roadmap to get there? Key part of that, of course, is network, is fleet. So there's sort of an unconstrained view being taken on network and fleet at the moment. So what is the ideal fleet size, mix, and of course, where should we be flying to? So that's a piece of work that's obviously we've always got 5-year plans and everything else, but this is a sort of a refresh of that, this 2030 vision. But it also will cover in terms of what type of airline, what sort of will be our priorities and everything else. And of course, we're always going to continue to be a high-end network carrier. We don't have aspirations to become maybe as big as some of our regional competitors, but it's about being the right size and always looking to see how we can differentiate as well.
And it's I'm just sorry to interrupt you there, but it's also something that I remember as well. It wasn't about being the biggest, and it wasn't about being the best at everything. It was about being different. And when you were different, doing those things in a special way.
But that consistency. Exactly. Which is, and I think with the, being maybe a bit smaller than some of our regional competitors, that enables you, it gives you a bit of an advantage to be able to provide that consistency in terms of service. So you're right, that was never the plan to be the biggest airline in the world, and that hasn't changed. But we will, as I said, we do now go back into growth mode. This year we'll have 30% growth in terms of ASKs. So available seat kilometres year on year, so that's pretty substantial. And we've got, we're bringing back some of the 380s. So 4 of the A380s come back, and they'll be deployed on London. In addition to that, we're operating 5 more A320s now. We've got a couple of 777s that we're flying passenger for as well, and then we've got more 787s to be delivered at the end of this year as well. So it's substantial.
It's exciting times.
It really is, and as I said, the focus is very much sort of getting back into not necessarily launching sort of lots of new routes, though we will be sort of going back. We've now sort of starting to run seasonal routes, which is a fairly new development for us. And there will be, we launched Copenhagen, for example, in October, which will be great. But it's really about focusing on existing routes and building that depth again, ramping up frequency and improving the connectivity through the Abu Dhabi hub.
Yeah, which is good. And coming back to that being different. I spent a lot of time, as you know, with Lufthansa, like yourself. And Lufthansa was always known as being obviously very German, but with that came the quality and the attention to detail. And I feel that's what Etihad has also done, and with its products, with its certifications, with the focus on that quality and excellence. That's also standing them in good stead.
It has, Chris. I think even you think with what we went through during COVID, incredibly tough times, but yet during that period, what we tried to use that, in terms of the continued development and enhancement of the product offering, we still continued to focus on that and invest on that, and not really, to ensure that when we came out of this, we were really, we were in an even stronger position. And there's some really good things that we're in the process of rolling out now in terms of how we're elevating the whole sort of guest experience. And it's something we've always prided ourselves on is it's really innovating, doing things differently. And that's something that we continue to focus on. And from a cargo perspective, continuing to ensure that we're providing the lift that is needed for our customers. And as I said, that continued investment in the cargo business with more freighters coming in. I mean, we're looking at now, because the first 350 comes in, freighter comes in 26. So we're now looking is there an opportunity to bring in some bridging capacity? So we're evaluating that at the moment. You mentioned about conversions as well. So we've got a number of 777 passenger aircraft that we continue to operate. Potentially, at some point, they could be good candidates for conversions. Those conversions are actually going to be happening here in Abu Dhabi as well. I mean, so Etihad
Which is fantastic as well, isn't it?
Incredible, yeah. I mean, Etihad Engineering have gone into a partnership with Israeli Aerospace Industries, and they're going to be creating 2 conversion lines here in Abu Dhabi for the 777.
That's great.
300ER SF. So. And of course, as you'd expect, a huge amount of demand for those slots. But obviously, with them being converted here in our backyard, it's it poses a great opportunity for us as well.
Tick boxes, Martin. Everybody talks about tick boxes, but when I look at the awards and the accolades, I mean, it's a real good endorsement of everything that we've been talking about: people, family, the location, fleet size, sustainability, all the areas that fall within your new 9 priorities, which is fantastic. But looking at some of these, I mean, they're incredible. Obviously, something that people would like to see and see more of. But you've got Air Cargo Woman Leader of the Year. That's great.
Incredible. I mean, like you say, I mean, we've had a huge amount of sort of accolades, and that's really, really endorses, a lot of the things that we've been doing. And you're right, in terms of the Woman of the Year in terms of Air Cargo, so that was Lata Narayan that won that, and was incredibly well deserved. So Lata heads up sort of the eastern region for us, based in Singapore, and she's just incredible. She really is. And I think what we I talked about the fact we've got over 130 different nationalities for the airline, but I think when I look at certainly some of my areas, global sales, sort of cargo, sort of marketing now as well, we're around about sort of 45% of sort of female sort of guys. So the share is really good, and that's something we're always focused on how we can develop sort of the women, Emirati sort of, obviously we all have a responsibility in terms of the development of our Emirati colleagues as well, but many Emirati females coming through the business now as well. So it's just the awards in general. I think one thing when I came back to cargo a couple of years ago, it was and I give Lubna sort of who heads up marketing and corp comms for us a huge amount of credit for all the work that she's done in this regard. But what we really needed to do, I think we'd lost our way a little bit, in a couple of years leading up to that, in terms of from a commercial standpoint, just our relationships with our key customers, just I think the perception of Etihad Cargo in the market, and my focus was to really restore that. And again, I give the team, Lubna, a huge amount of credit for the way that we've sort of gone about that. And as you said, these awards are a great recognition of all the stuff we've been doing, and I think and a lot of these awards as well, people look and think, well, okay, this is just because of marketing. A lot of these awards they're voted for by our customers,
which is important as well. And the other one that sits in nicely with one of the priorities is the Air Cargo Sustainability Leader. I mean, sustainability for us, Chris, is way up on our agenda, as it should be.
Exactly. And we really. We see ourselves as as thought leaders in this space, and we do some incredible things in terms of from a sustainability perspective. We're very lucky that we're operating a very modern fleet. So that helps tremendously in terms of minimising our footprint. But I mean, huge focus on SAF, On various, I mean, we've got 2 aircraft that we've got an A350, which we call the Sustainable 50, and a 787, which is the Green Line, all in special livery. And these aircraft are used as basically test beds for various sort of sustainability initiatives. We do eco flights where we're using, SAF, minimising the use of single-use plastics. I mean, actually, end of last year, we reduced the use of single-use plastics on board our aircraft by 80%. Even the catering equipment that we now, the meals that are served in economy, all of that, the equipment that's used, all of that's reusable. So we really do a huge amount, and we've, as you said, we've received a number of awards based on our sustainability,
which is great. And the reality of sustainability, I mean, as long as there's going to be aircraft, you've always got to realise it's not exactly the best for the planet.
No.
But all the other things associated with it, the mitigating activities, that's where people can really stand out. Yeah. And that's so important.
Yeah. Well, I think the sector at the moment, I think today it sort of represents, I think it's 1.5%, isn't it, of global emissions is what. But at the current growth rates, by 2050, that could be as much as 22-23%.
Yeah.
So we have to act now to decarbonise aviation. We really do.
Yeah. And it's the mitigating factor, what you can do as opposed to. And I think there needs to be a lot more transparency and awareness as well from the industry bodies to make people be aware, because all they're doing is just shooting it down. Yeah. You mentioned Lubna. Mm-hmm. We've got an episode with Lubna as well.
Oh, great!
And
very good.
From my experience, she's a very, very formidable lady.
Yeah. She. I mean, she's a real force. And as I said, when I gave her that sort of direction when I returned to Cargo, we need to elevate the sort of our reputation again, and she's done a phenomenal job in doing that. Her attention to detail is just second to none.
I know that only too well.
So we're very lucky to have her.
Yeah, no one could. And we also did an episode with Rayan. So from an ambassador of the UAE and a man with passion and pride, exceptional. Really
so Rayan's sort of new to cargo, but has a wealth of experience on the ops side, sort of procurement, and as for me. Some of the best commercial people I've worked with are ones that have a sound ops background.
Yes.
So important. They don't overpromise. They know what can be delivered. Yeah. And Rayan is, he's definitely one for the future. He really is. And again, we're always looking to see how we can develop our Emirati talent. And and again, I think. Maybe before, when you would talk to people on the other side of the business, there would be limited interest in coming across to cargo. But again, let's see. Rayan just was so excited about moving across. And he said already he's hit the ground running. He's doing a great job.
That's just lovely to see. Right, we're coming near to the end of this particular session, Martin. So just to end. 18 years, all of these challenges, all of these successes, the awards, etc. What things, just very quickly, whether it's people, whether it's situations, what has been your standout highlights, or what you would look back and say, that's what gave me that extra momentum, or that's what gave me that extra opportunity, or that's what gave me that extra satisfaction? What would it be, just to close?
I think some of the people I've worked with, yourself, obviously starting my career as my first boss at Lufthansa Cargo, just in terms of what I learned from you, us both having similar backgrounds, seeing that we could be successful, and that was done through hard work, commitment, sort of dedication.
But you had a H in yours, which was Hayes.
I know it was A's. I don't know if there's a H.
The H was dropped in Felton.
but just some of the people I've been lucky enough to work with over the years. Some real sort of Des Vitanis is always
gentleman.
The ultimate gentleman. He was the ultimate ambassador for the airline. Just the way he carried himself, how knowledgeable he was. Learned a huge amount from Des and have a massive amount of respect for the man. But then others, James Hogan. James Hogan, was the CEO for 10 years. The opportunities he gave me, I'll forever be in his debt. To go from cargo. It was interesting. I went to Jet Airways for 18 months, and I remember sitting in a meeting, and he said, "All right, Martin, I've got a mission for you. I want you to go across Jet, run their cargo division." And I was thinking, okay, I'm Mumbai. I've been there many times on business.
Yeah.
It'd be an interesting place to live, and think, just do it. And I did it, and it was the most incredible experience. Living within India, realizing just what a vast country it is, how different parts are. Different. The culture there, and also working for an airline like Jet was pretty interesting. But I learned a huge amount. And then after that, sort of James said, okay, right, what needs to come across to the passenger side, and ultimately was given the role to run the Americas, which was a very desirable, senior level role, and for someone that didn't have any passenger experience, to be given that opportunity. But what it showed is that your skills are transferable, and going across to the passenger side, you think that, well, actually, you can learn a lot from what we do on the cargo side, and applying those practices as well. And it's so look, I mean, that was a huge highlight for me, sort of being able to move across the other side, but then coming back to cargo as well. So it's as I said, I've been very, very fortunate. Many career highlights, and also as well, never getting pigeonholed into one area. Always being able to move around. Always been being able to evolve. More recently now taking on responsibility for marketing, sponsorships, and brands. That's a new part of the business. I mean, I've always had that sort of marketing responsibility as relates to cargo, a little bit on the passenger side, but now having those divisions report into me, can really start to sort of develop my knowledge and sort of skills in that area as well.
No, definitely. So you might be able to introduce the Martin Drew line of moisturising cream, which keeps you like Peter Pan, eh?
Yeah.
No, but seriously, Martin, what you've done. No, but honestly, what you've done, it's got to be up there with anybody that's coming into this industry. You're an ideal model of what to do, and also how to take opportunities.
Yeah.
So many people are so worried about taking that step, but as you've proven as well, and both of us, you said from similar backgrounds, but to be able to live all around the world like we have, this industry has given us so much. Yeah.
So fortunate.
Anybody listening to this, come into this industry, it's the best.
It certainly is. Yeah, I mean, like you say, the opportunities it's given us has been incredible. We're very, very fortunate. And that's why, when you speak to, I know there's a general sort of concern around bringing young people into the industry, but I think again COVID helped elevate the profile of the industry, and I think we're just great examples of what an incredibly rewarding industry it is and what opportunities it gives you. I feel very lucky, really do.
No, we all are. And listen, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
We're lucky to have had the opportunity. Okay, good luck with the rest of the career, which I'm sure will be populated with many highlights. Okay, and hopefully we'll get a chance to have a little chat again.
Very good.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Really
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.